Oh,
Some have wondered if Zoro is too strong for King, having scarred Kaido earlier. They're
what's
asking if
up?
King is capable of such a thing too, scarring his captain, and if not, is Zoro not already
What's
strong?
up?
What's the point of this fight exactly? Well, like I said earlier about how Oda writes fights to tell a story about people, places,
Oh,
and
jeez.
dreams.
I need to
What
buy
do
the
swordsman
food
fights?
for my dog.
And it is telling that blades tell a story too. And so you have to wonder about King's own blade, its name, its rank. Does it carry a will as great as Enma and Odin, to open the borders of Wano, the watery Chimanji and Kuina, to become the world's strongest, or a curse or bloodlust as powerful as the Kitetsu?
What?
Another ability I forgot to mention, Awakening. King and Zoro both seem to value strength. They might each push themselves beyond their limits and have to overcome it somehow. We have yet to see an awakening yet for zones beyond the guards of Impel Down. Does King have an awakening? Will he break his limits? Will Zoro do the same?
Okay,
What
well,
else
okay,
does Zoro
man.
have beyond Ashura? In terms of pre-time skip, Zoro seemed to struggle a lot more. We can go as far back as his fight with Dracula Mihawk, and I think this battle was so perfect in terms of the mindset Zoro may have returned to. Right now, after 2 years of training under the instruction of the world's strongest swordsman, Zoro probably feels invincible. But the past words of Mihawk still ring true. Hear me, little frog in his well. It's time for you to realize that the world is much bigger than what it seems from down there. This is one translation or interpretation of the original Japanese. I wanted to quote it because it sounded very Mihawk-like, very clairvoyant, and I guess you could say Shakespearean. Another interpretation of these words is Zoro was at the time a person who had never experienced the real world. That is, he was unaware of the great distance, the vast canyon or gap in strength that existed between his current status and the world's strongest swordsman, that there were others out there near Mihawk's level, that there were others in his way. I've always loved the sense of disbelief from Zoro, that his three-sword style could be stopped by another man's pocket knife, that it wasn't possible for the world to be so far away.
The lynch.
The vast distance between him
I'm
and
just
Luffy,
getting my
Zoro couldn't believe it.
dog's
The weight of that tiny blade far exceeded
food
three of his own. The blade
to
that
see where it's less expensive.
the warrior's soul.
Because
Before
it's
the battle
fucking
had even begun, he
expensive.
had lost. From this match, his spirit
Jesus.
felt as if it were crushed by an insurmountable weight, and his dream was slipping away. After being defeated, Zoro promised his captain that he would never lose again. And it is these words that have really set a high bar for Zoro ever since then, because I sincerely doubt Zoro will ever lose again, at least not to another swordsman, or a passable swordsman. Inspired by the words of Mihawk, they concluded their battle. My name is Dracula Mihawk. It's too soon for you to die. Discover yourself, see the world, and grow strong, Zoro. However long it may take, I shall await you at the top. Strive with your whole heart and mind to best
Jesus,
this blade.
this website's more
Strive to
expensive.
surpass me.
Come on. But,
Willpower.
maybe
That is
this
his
one.
skill. This he shares with Luffy as captain. The refusal to lose,
Yeah.
to quit.
I don't
Never
think I will
giving up,
pay it less than
never
this.
backing down. A belief
Okay,
in yourself
okay,
and
okay.
against any reliance on gods or superstition or even devils. The kind of will, the kind of faith that can cut through anything, even fire, even the harshest of flames, even hell itself. Zoro is close. The top is now far away. Only King and a few other obstacles stand in his path. And I think the easiest One Piece theory to bet on is that Zoro will not lose. But as usual, we will have to wait and see. Don't forget to like the video, comment your thoughts below, share this with your friends, and subscribe. Also click that notification bell. As always, there is more to come. Until next time, I'll see you all in Valhalla.
Almost there, guys. Almost there. Turkey. Who is there? No one is here yet. Okay.
Hello everyone. This is it. This is the first episode of the One Piece Dungeons & Dragons podcast. I'm here with Lost Paws Noble. Hello, how's it going? What's cracking? I'm here with Tekken.
Hi, mateys.
I'm here with Too Spooky.
Howdy, lads.
And I'm here with Briggs from All Day Anime.
What up, Chad, lads? You almost forgot again.
The only person here who's played D&D before besides me is Tekken, so for a lot of these people, it's
Almost
their
there.
first experience in the world of Dungeons & Dragons.
Rustage, did you tell them about the initiation? No, we should. We should not tell them about that special thing they have to do, or else they might get crazy.
Yeah, I think we might get banned on Twitch if too many of us are naked at once.
I still have the scars when I had to get initiated. Yeah.
Thanks for sending me the video, by the way. It was
Oh god. Well, you know.
For anyone who's interested, we are just running 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons, but we've removed the elements that wouldn't exist in the One Piece universe, like elves and magic and stuff. And we are homebrewing a devil fruit system where everyone here they're shitty pirates. They don't have devil fruits. They're like the shittest pirates. They're like starting out. They're like,
Okay, we're ranked higher than Foxy. I mean, come on.
no, holy shit, you are not. You are not ranked higher than Foxy. Are you kidding me? You are of the levels of the mounted pirates that
Okay, there we go. Big to work.
How's it going, everybody? Too Spooky here. And today is the day I finally bring you the long-awaited and highly anticipated new One Piece Top 10. I'm extremely sorry that this video here took so long to come out. In my previous One Piece Top 10, I did say this video wouldn't be coming out for quite a while. But when I said quite a while, what I actually meant was like 1 or 2 months tops. Now, here I am releasing this video 4 months later. So I'm incredibly sorry that this video took so long to come out, but hopefully this video will end up being worth the wait. So with that, today, we're going to be counting down the top 10 strongest characters in One Piece. Now, there are a ton of things we are going to cover in this list, and that means there are also a lot of things you guys should keep in mind before we actually jump into it. The first thing you need to know is that my pronunciation is god-awful, so I will more than likely mispronounce multiple names or phrases. The second thing you need to know is that this list will be based on how strong these characters are overall. So what we're going to be doing is we are going to be looking at their physical abilities, their ability to use hockey and how effective their hockey is, their intelligence, their notable connections or alliances with other characters and organizations, their devil fruit abilities if they have a devil fruit, and a few other random aspects as well. Because personally, I believe each of these characteristics are very important in deciding which of these characters are indeed the strongest in One Piece. The third thing you need to know is that there are so many strong characters in One Piece. So many, in fact, that condensing all of these powerful characters into a single top 10 list would be near impossible for me to do. So to make it easier on myself, I've created a list of conditions that a character needs to meet to be eligible to be on this list in the first place. And these conditions are as follows. The first is that these characters need to be currently alive in the story. So characters such as Whitebeard, Goldie Roger, and Ace will not be on this list. The second is that these characters need to be in their prime or very close to it. So characters such as Rayleigh, Sengoku, and Garp will not be on this list as well. And the final condition is that we need to know a decent amount of information about these characters and their abilities. So characters we know little to nothing about can't be on this list, simply because we don't have enough information to truly confirm they are one of the strongest. Now I can say without a doubt that a character such as Monkey D Dragon is a very powerful character in the One Piece world, but we know very little about him, and as of right now we know nothing about his abilities. So although I believe Dragon would be one of the 10 strongest One Piece characters, we just simply don't know enough about him or his abilities to place him on this list accurately. So instead of making a fool of myself, I decided it's best to just keep him off the list entirely. However, also keep in mind that there will be a few exceptions to this rule on the list. So in regards to this condition, characters such as Monkey D Dragon, the Gorosei, Basil Hawkins, Yaruj, and X Drake will not be on this list. And the final thing you need to know about before we get into the list is that the way I will be formatting this top 10 is by starting each character off with a detailed description about everything you need to know about the character in question, and then giving my personal analysis on the information I just relayed to you. So there will be a few instances where I sound like I'm repeating myself. Also, we will be covering a lot of information for each character, so be prepared for a lot of knowledge being thrown your way. But of course, we won't be covering everything, just the things I think are most important in determining how powerful these characters really are. And finally, now that you know what to expect, let's begin. Number 10, Monkey D Luffy. I'm sure most of you are fully aware of Luffy's abilities because he is the main character after all. But for the sake of keeping this list somewhat professional, I'm going to be going over all of his notable qualities anyway. And I want to say sorry in advance because we are going to be covering a lot of information about Luffy. So now might be the time to go grab some snacks. So the very first thing we are going to go over is his physical abilities without the use of his Devil Fruit. Considering that Luffy is the main character of the series, it is no surprise to hear that he has an enormous amount of physical strength, to the point where he can easily lift and shatter large boulders, push buildings apart, and shatter steel easily with his hands. Additionally, he can easily flip over and throw big men who are over twice the size of himself. And Luffy himself has also said that due to his training with his grandfather Garp as a kid, he has been able to throw a punch as powerful as a pistol round since he was 7 years old. Which, if that's as strong as his fists were then, I can't even begin to think of what we could compare them to now. Luffy also has incredible speed to the point where he can easily anticipate his enemies' movements and in turn counter their attacks. And even though Luffy's normal speed is nothing special on its own, it is multiplied greatly with the use of his Gear Second technique. But we'll talk about that in a minute. Luffy also has amazing durability and endurance, being able to endure a ton of powerful attacks from his enemies and still continue to fight. Some of the attacks he's endured would easily kill a normal person. And of course a lot of this is due to the help he gets from being a rubber man, but for instance he is able to take on these same deadly attacks while they are imbued with Haki that bypass his Devil Fruit powers. And yet he can still get back up to fight. The best example of Luffy's endurance would be his fight with Cracker, where Luffy fought him for 11 hours straight, using techniques such as Gear 4th that really eat up his energy. And he was still able to defeat Cracker by a small margin. But it doesn't even stop there. Luffy was also able to withstand attacks from Sanji shortly after his fierce battle with Cracker. And then shortly after this encounter with Sanji, Luffy managed to defeat most of Big Mom's army that went after him before he was finally taken down. Which is absolutely insane. Another unique ability Luffy has developed is his immunity to poison, due to Luffy surviving the poison from Magellan's Doku Doku no Mi. Because of this, there has currently not been a poison shown to affect Luffy very much at all. Next, let's talk about Luffy's intelligence, or should I say, lack of. Don't get me wrong, Luffy isn't stupid by any means, but he is also by no means one of the smarter characters in the series, and he is without a doubt one of, if not the least intelligent character that will be featured on this list. Luffy has a very broad imagination and is very creative, especially with his Devil Fruit. He has great social skills, which is great for making new friends and recruiting allies even if he doesn't mean to. And he's very good at achieving the impossible, simply because he can easily think of a way to achieve these tasks. However, usually Luffy tends to think of the worst possible way to go about it, which in turn causes a ton of problems and destruction for anyone involved, and often gets himself and his crew into some pretty detrimental situations. So intelligence isn't really one of his strong suits. Luffy also has a very strong sense of willpower, but we'll talk more about that in a second. When it comes to Haki, Luffy is one of the more prominent users currently. The main reason for this is because Luffy is one of the few characters that can utilize all three types of Haki. He is also currently one of the only 6 living characters that can use Conqueror's Hockey, at least from what is revealed so far. The simple way of explaining what exactly Conqueror's Hockey does is that the user basically exerts their willpower onto individuals who have weak wills to render them unconscious, although individuals who have a stronger sense of willpower will remain unaffected. And because Luffy has one of the most prominent senses of willpower in the series, his Conqueror's Hockey is almost unmatched. For instance, during his battle with the new Fishman Pirates, he used his Conqueror's Hockey to take out 50,000 men at once. Just try and comprehend how many people that actually is. Luffy can also utilize Observation Hockey, which allows the user to sense the presence of others even if they are very far away. This in turn allows the user to mindlessly predict an opponent's movements moments before they make them, allowing Luffy to easily dodge attacks before they strike and even dodge a bullet at point-blank range, allowing Luffy to have a great advantage against his opponents unless they have an unpredictable fighting style. And finally, Luffy can also use Armament Hockey, and he's very proficient with it too. Basically what Armament Hockey consists of is an individual uses their spirit life force to create an invisible armor around themselves or specific parts of the user's body. It of course can not only be used as a means of defense, but also as a weapon because the armor is just so strong. Luffy's use of Armament Hockey greatly strengthens his normal attacks, but also strengthens the techniques created from his Devil Fruit along with creating some new ones. Although we'll cover his Devil Fruit abilities in a minute, Luffy would not be able to use his Red Hawk technique without Armament Hockey, because somehow between Gear Second and his Hockey, Luffy found a way to ignite this attack to create both fire and an explosion. Along with that, without the use of Hockey, Luffy would not be able to access his technique Gear Fourth. So bottom line, Luffy's Hockey is something you definitely don't want to mess with, even if the person up against him is also a prominent Hockey user. Next up, let's talk about Luffy's Devil Fruit, which is the Gomu Gomu no Mi, otherwise known as the Gum Gum Fruit, which gives Luffy's body the property of rubber, making him a rubber man. This fruit allows Luffy to stretch any part of his body like rubber. And because Luffy is a rubber man, this makes him immune to pretty much all blunt attacks, including but not limited to cannonballs and bullets, blunt objects, hand-to-hand combat, falls from very high places, and with the addition of his Armament Hockey, this defense is even harder to bypass. However, if his opponent were to use Armament Hockey against Luffy when he himself isn't using it to defend himself, they can bypass his immunity for a direct hit. Although Luffy is immune to blunt attacks, he is weak to slashing attacks such as swords. This fruit is also the natural weakness of the Goro Goro no Mi, being able to attack this specific electric Logia user without the use of Hockey, and is completely immune to the electrical attacks, making the Gomu Gomu no Mi far superior. One of Luffy's best characteristics would be his creativity when it comes to his Devil Fruit, and through this creativity he has created a ton of techniques. I won't be going through all of them just because there are so many, but I will be going over the most notable or recognizable. It should also be noted that a lot of these techniques would only be useful at close range, but because Luffy is able to stretch his body and limbs, these attacks can also easily become mid to long range attacks. So no matter where you are, you won't be able to escape Luffy's attacks. Luffy's signature technique is the Gum Gum Pistol, allowing him to deliver a very powerful punch as strong as a pistol. The Gum Gum Rocket, which is Luffy's main method of traveling great distances quickly by grabbing onto an object, stretching his arm back, and flinging himself away kind of like a slingshot. The Gum Gum Bazooka, where Luffy stretches both of his arms back a decent distance before propelling both of these arms into his opponents, with palms open to send them flying with great force. The Gum Gum Gatling, where Luffy sends out a massive barrage of constant powerful punches from seemingly every direction all at once. The Gum Gum Rifle, where Luffy twists his arm while he stretches it, and once his arm stretches forward and makes contact with the enemy, his arm untwists to create more force, along with allowing Luffy to perform this attack quicker than others, because the twisting of his arm also means Luffy doesn't need to stretch it back as far as other techniques. The Gum Gum Balloon, where Luffy inflates himself like a balloon to further soften blunt attacks, or to even return projectiles back at enemies such as cannonballs. This technique can also be used for a number of different scenarios. And the Gum Gum Bell, where Luffy stretches his neck back a considerable distance before flinging it back to create a devastating headbutt. Each of these techniques are very powerful and useful by themselves, but Luffy can also imbue them with Armament Hockey to create an even more devastating attack. Now that we know a bit about Luffy's normal techniques, let's look at each of his gear techniques. The first one, or should I say second, is called Gear Second. This technique allows Luffy to speed up the blood flow in his entire body or select limbs, which provide them with more oxygen and nutrients. Providing more blood flow allows Luffy to become temporarily much faster and a little bit stronger, as long as the technique is active. However, this technique does take a toll on Luffy's body, essentially shortening his life bit by bit the more he uses it. So because of that, it does have a big drawback. Although after the time skip, I imagine Luffy has managed to perfect this technique to the point where it affects his body less or doesn't affect him at all. Because Gear Second allows Luffy to be both faster and stronger, it opens Luffy to a whole new plethora of techniques. These techniques are strengthened with both speed and a little bit of strength, giving them the new addition of Jet in their name. So a lot of the techniques we just discussed in conjunction with Gear Second are known as Jet Pistol, Jet Bazooka, Jet Gatling, and so on. Additionally, Luffy can also add Armament Hockey to his techniques while in Gear Second, making for even more powerful attacks. And with the addition of this Hockey, Luffy also gains access to a new range of abilities involving fire. Somehow, with the steam Gear Second produces, Luffy is able to ignite his limbs so long as they are coated in Armament Hockey. That way he doesn't get burned. These techniques are known as Gum Gum Red Hawk, which is a flaming, much more powerful version of the Gum Gum Jet Pistol. The Gum Gum Hawk Gatling, which is a stronger flaming version of Gum Gum Jet Gatling. The Gum Gum Hawk Rifle, which is a stronger flaming version of the Gum Gum Jet Rifle. And the Gum Gum Eagle Bazooka, which is a flaming, stronger version of the Gum Gum Jet Bazooka. And that pretty much does it for Gear Second, so let's move on to the next one, which is Gear Third. This technique consists of Luffy biting a small opening into his thumb joint, and then blowing air into that opening to inflate specific parts of his body. When one or more of his limbs are inflated, they are so big that they resemble the size of a giant's limb, which, because his limbs are so big, it ends up increasing the mass of that specific area on his body, which creates a larger area to attack with, including the addition of far greater strength. And there's a possibility you might think this sounds a bit similar to his Gum Gum Balloon technique, but the difference is with Gum Gum Balloon, Luffy is just sucking in a bunch of air which expands his body or his lungs until he exhales, whereas Gear Third instead blows this air directly into his bones, which even though they can stretch, they still maintain the strong nature of the bones themselves. And although this attack is very powerful, it does have a downfall, which is mobility. So Luffy generally only uses it when he needs raw strength opposed to speed. But it's not as bad as it sounds, because after the time skip, Luffy has managed to direct or select where the air is kept in his limbs.
Cool.
So now Luffy can still stretch his arms while they are inflated and maneuver them much better than he could before the time skip. As you probably already know, Gear Third opens up Luffy to a whole new range of abilities. Or, much like Gear Second, some big improvements to his regular techniques. Emphasis on big. Such as the Gum Gum Giant Pistol, which is basically the regular Gum Gum pistol except with a gigantic fist flying at you instead. The Gum Gum Giant Bazooka, which is basically the regular Gum Gum Bazooka except, you know, much bigger. I think you guys get the idea what the rest are like, because they're all just gigantic versions of his normal techniques. Luffy also has the capability of mixing Gear Second with Gear Third to create the Gum Gum Giant Jet Shell, which is where he inflates his body with Gear Third while keeping up his Gear Second to ram his whole body into his opponent with both immense strength and speed in the shape of a cannonball. Now, although this technique is very, very powerful, it is also rather dangerous because it puts double the strain on Luffy's body and restricts his movements. So if he fails to land this technique, it could very well be game over for him. In addition to that, Luffy can also enhance his Gear Third techniques with Armament Hockey to create some extremely powerful techniques. A few examples of these techniques are the Gum Gum Elephant Gun, which is a hockey-imbued version of the Gum Gum Giant Pistol. The Gum Gum Elephant Gatling, which is the hockey-imbued Gear Third version of the regular Gum Gum Gatling. And the Gum Gum Grizzly Magnum, which is essentially the Gum Gum Giant Bazooka imbued with hockey. And each of these techniques are definitely some of Luffy's most powerful, so they should not be taken lightly. And that pretty much wraps it up for Gear 3rd, so let's look at his currently last gear, Gear 4th. This technique currently has two different forms, which are Bound Man and Tank Man, but we'll talk about Bound Man first. So to activate this technique, Luffy first covers his arm with Armament Hockey and then blows air into it. However, instead of inflating his bones like with Gear 3rd, he instead inflates his muscles and then inflates the rest of his body as well. Similar to how Gear 2nd constantly emits steam from Luffy's body, this form does as well. And because of that, Luffy is incapable of standing still and needs to constantly bounce. While in this form, Luffy's strength and speed are increased drastically, and in a way it utilizes both Gear 2nd and Gear 3rd into one massive powerhouse. Because you see, what Gear 2nd lacks is strength, and what Gear 3rd lacks is speed. So when Luffy mixes the two to create Gear 4th, he is almost unstoppable, because he is both insanely fast and insanely strong. Also, Gear 4th gives Luffy amazing defensive capabilities, because even though his body is hardened with Haki, he still remains rubbery, which allows attacks to bounce right off of him. So now Luffy can even counteract his weakness of sharp objects with this technique because his body is hard enough to stop it from piercing him. And yet he is still elastic to the point where any attack will just bounce right off of him. Also with this technique, Luffy can bounce off of the air similar to Geppo, and moves so fast he seemingly disappears like Soru. Although this technique gives Luffy some amazing abilities, this form does have two downfalls. The first is that many of his techniques require Luffy to compress rather than stretch, which means many of these techniques will only work at close range. And the second downfall is that this technique can only be used for a short amount of time. And after that time is up, Luffy is barely able to move his body. So if he doesn't get the job done before Gear 4th deactivates, he's pretty much done for. As you can guess, Gear 4th comes with a few new and powerful techniques, such as the Gum Gum Kong Gun, which is where Luffy compresses his hand into his forearm and then unleashes an insanely powerful short-ranged punch. The Gum Gum Rhino Schneider, which is where Luffy compresses both of his feet into his shins to then release a double kick powerful enough to send some of the strongest enemies flying. The Gum Gum Culverin, which is where Luffy sends out a punch similar to the Gum Gum Pistol, however this one is very different. This is one of the only techniques in Gear 4th that stretches instead of compresses. But unlike his regular Gum Gum Pistol punch, this punch will continue to redirect itself until it finally makes contact with his target. No matter how many times it takes, there is just no escape. And the Gum Gum King Kong Gun, which essentially is the normal Kong gun, except this time around, Luffy
What's up, people?
more air into his arm, similar to
I wanna become famous. No, I don't.
Compressed
Thank you.
punch. And in my opinion, I think this is probably currently Luffy's most powerful attack. Now moving on to the second Gear 4th form, which is called Tank Man Full Version. This form was achieved after Luffy ate a tremendous amount of biscuits to the point where he was extremely round and bloated. Apparently this form also drastically increases Luffy's durability, because beforehand while Luffy was in his Bound Man form against Cracker, he almost got his arm cut off by Cracker's sword. But after moving to Tank Man, Cracker's sword was unable to pierce Luffy at all. This form also brought forth one new technique called Gum Gum Cannonball, which is where Luffy compresses his stomach along with sucking the enemy into his compression, then launches them a great distance away with a tremendous amount of power and speed. But that does it for all of Luffy's Devil Fruit abilities, so let's look at his notable relationships, connections, and allies. And let me just add that Luffy has a ton of different allies, so I will try and briefly touch upon the important ones. The first group we need to talk about is his own crew. Luffy has some of the strongest and smartest pirates on his side, which help him out in a number of different situations. Generally, Luffy tends to fight his battles on his own, but when needed, Luffy and his crew make a great team when it comes to taking down tough foes. Additionally, without them, Luffy without a doubt would have never made it as far as he has, and without them, Luffy without a doubt would never be able to become the Pirate King. Luffy also has a fleet of pirate crews backing him. These crews are the Beautiful Pirates led by Cavendish, the Barto Club led by Bartolomeo, the Tonta Corps led by Leo, the Hapo Navy led by Sai, the Martial Arts Alliance led by Ideo, the new Giant Warrior Pirates led by Haruden, and the Yonta Maria Grand Fleet led by Orlumbus, for a grand total of 5,640 people ready to help Luffy anytime he is in need. So Luffy essentially has a small pirate army following him, which will without a doubt help his influence, and help him defeat some very powerful enemies in the future. Luffy also has some considerable connections within his family. His father is the most wanted man in the world and the leader of the Revolutionary Army. And although the two actually haven't spoken yet, Luffy has made connections with other members of the Revolutionary Army. So it is without a doubt in my mind that the two will end up coming together at some point. And by the way, Dragon saved Luffy in Logtown, so it appears as though he does care about his son's life. So it's good to know that one of the most powerful men in the world is looking after Luffy in one way or another. Additionally, Luffy's brother Sabo is second in command in the Revolutionary Army, and those two always make it a goal to protect each other. So it is without a doubt in my mind that Luffy will have some sort of alliance with the Revolutionary Army, which is one of the most powerful and mysterious groups in the world. And this alliance will definitely come into play later on down the road. Luffy's grandfather Garp is also a notable ally, although I don't know if I would actually call them allies particularly. Luffy also has alliances or friendships with many other pirates and their crews. For instance, he is allied with the Heart Pirates in Trafalgar Law, and together they are on a mission to defeat the Yonko Kaido, who is the
Jesus.
strongest creature in the world. And this alliance will definitely be a key factor in accomplishing that goal. And seeing as they already overthrew the Doflamingo family with their alliance, we can see that together they can accomplish some great things. Luffy is also allied with Boa Hancock, who is a Shichibukai. Without his alliance with her, Luffy would not have been able to break into Impel Down or temporarily save Ace. And she is also very powerful and has a big influence on many people, so it's good to keep her close. Luffy is also allied with Jinbei and the Fishman Pirates, which, having the influence of the entire Fishman Island in addition to Jinbei and the Fishman Pirates, is a very good alliance to have. Additionally, Jinbei is pretty much confirmed to eventually become a member of Luffy's crew, so with his influence and power, it will be awesome to have him aboard. Luffy is also allied with Silver's Rayleigh, who was the first mate of the former Pirate King himself, and Rayleigh helped train Luffy in many different aspects over the time skip, including how to control his haki. Without this training, Luffy would definitely still have a very long way to go to get to where he is now. And having such a powerful and wise man on his side has proved to be a great asset. Luffy also carries a strong relationship with Shanks, who is a Yonko and the red-haired pirates. Although I don't ever see them fighting together in the near future, Shanks is Luffy's role model and the person Luffy aims to someday grow strong enough to defeat or surpass. So his relationship with Shanks is very important because it shows the level Luffy needs to reach to truly become the king of the pirates. There are also a bunch of other pirate alliances or friendships Luffy has made, but these were the ones I felt were most notable. Luffy also has a small connection to the Marines with Kobe, and connections to Alabasta, Skypiea, and Dressrosa for helping save their kingdoms. And these aren't even all the allies Luffy has. The list just goes on and on. But in the end, after we look at all the world powers, the only one Luffy isn't somewhat connected to is the Gorosei and the Celestial Dragons. So Luffy has connections in all the right places, which will definitely help him throughout his journey, and all of these connections are very important in calling Luffy one of the strongest characters in the One Piece world. But now that we've finally finished all of the important information about Luffy, let me explain to you why I believe he is strong enough to be in this top 10, and why I ranked him 10th for that matter. So we just went over a lot of information. Probably too much information at that. But knowing everything you can possibly know about these characters to really look at every angle is very important in my opinion. So why do I think Luffy deserves to be in this top 10? I know a lot of you out there will agree that Luffy is definitely one of the strongest. And I know a lot of you will also disagree, thinking that Luffy is indeed strong, but he is currently by no means one of the top 10. Well, honestly, I can see it both ways. But saying Luffy isn't one of the strongest characters at this point in the story is a bit ridiculous. First, I want to discuss his relationships. Being that he is the main character and having progressed this far, he has created a seemingly endless amount of allies. And honestly, compared to other characters who will appear on the list, Luffy has more allies than almost every single one of them. And if he doesn't have more allies, he has debatably more important ones. What I mean by that is pretty simple, but mainly it comes down to the fact that Luffy gets special treatment as the main character. And to reach his goal of becoming the king of the pirates, he is going to need lots of help and tons of allies in important places to make that possible. Like we stated earlier, Luffy has at least one ally in every single type of world power aside from the Gorosei and the Celestial Dragon. So he really isn't missing out on much. He also has a fleet of over 5,000 men ready at a moment's notice to help Luffy with whatever he needs. He has a powerful crew helping him achieve his dream. He has other pirate crews allied with him, such as the Heart Pirates, who are working together with the Straw Hats to take down a Yonko, which will be no easy task. He has kingdoms such as Alabasta who are indebted to him, allied Shichibukai, both current and former, and just so many more. So in terms of influence and connections, Luffy is much more powerful than a lot of people who will appear on this list. In regards to Luffy's normal physical strength, he is definitely stronger than most, thanks to Garp's training when Luffy was a kid. And let's be honest here for a second. Luffy isn't really a big-looking guy by himself, so it's definitely surprising that he's as strong as he is. Do I think Luffy is the strongest character based on just raw physical strength? Hell no. Do I think a lot of his physical strength and other physical abilities is also the result of his Devil Fruit? Definitely. So let's move on to that. And let me just start out by saying that if Luffy wasn't as creative as he was, his Devil Fruit would be nowhere near as useful as it is. When I think of a fruit turning someone into a rubber man, it sounds like one of the worst ideas ever. But Luffy has proved me wrong time and time again, creating new and exciting techniques all throughout the story to combat different enemies and to just overall grow stronger. But something that I believe is a huge downfall in regards to his fruit is how dangerous it can be. A lot of Luffy's strongest techniques take a huge toll on Luffy's body after he uses them, such as Gear Second slowly taking time off of his lifespan with every use, and Gear Fourth leaving him unable to move after prolonged use, even so long as not being able to move for 3 whole days after using it twice in his fight against Doflamingo. So although his techniques are powerful enough to take out some of the most powerful foes, it comes at a big cost. And unfortunately for Luffy, other characters in One Piece are able to perform impressive techniques as well, but theirs don't come with any backlash, making theirs automatically better in comparison. But I will give credit where it is due by saying other characters' Devil Fruits are much better than Luffy's, but Luffy has found a way to make his Devil Fruit just as useful and powerful as theirs, if not more useful and powerful. Also, Luffy has found many ways to incorporate Armament Hockey into his techniques to boost their potential, along with using Hockey to create entirely new techniques such as Gear Fourth. Because honestly, without Hockey, Gear Fourth likely wouldn't even exist. But moving on to Luffy's Hockey abilities, he is definitely one of the more proficient Hockey users from what we've seen. Luffy has access to all 3 types of Hockey, which is already a very impressive accomplishment. With Conqueror's Hockey, Luffy can already take out any normal human with a weak will without even touching them. And on top of that, since Conqueror's Hockey is based on willpower, Luffy has pretty much every other character in the series beat because Luffy's willpower is almost unmatched. His observation Hockey is also very impressive, but not as impressive as I was hoping. I've seen that Luffy can easily anticipate his enemy's moves, yet he still manages to let his opponents strike him way too many times. I understand that a lot of his opponents are very powerful and sometimes unpredictable, but I think Luffy really needs to step up his game and avoid some hits once in a while. So without a doubt, observation Hockey is his weakest of the 3. And finally, in regards to Hockey, his use of Armament Hockey is also a force to be reckoned with, because Luffy has learned to easily cover his limbs quickly while fighting his enemies for both offensive and defensive purposes. Whether he is blocking an attack or performing an attack, his Armament Hockey is on par with a lot of the other strong characters in One Piece. Additionally, Luffy has incorporated his Armament Hockey into many of his techniques like we just stated earlier, including Gear Fourth, to create his currently strongest technique, the King Kong gun, which is one of the stronger techniques we've seen so far in the One Piece world. And lastly, let's look at his intelligence. In terms of intelligence, Luffy is definitely lacking, but what he doesn't have in intelligence he makes up with willpower. And like I stated just before, in my opinion, I think Luffy has the most willpower compared to almost every other character. So something I really like about Luffy is that whenever he is lacking in something, he more than makes up for it in something else. And as a little bonus, since Luffy has a high immunity to poison now, I believe that he would be able to easily fight Magellan once again without having to worry too much about getting hurt or dying for that matter. So I feel like Luffy is currently superior to him, which is why Magellan won't be on this list. Also, Luffy's Devil Fruit seems to be the natural weakness to Enel's Devil Fruit, making it so Enel's lightning techniques do nothing to him. So simply for that reason, and the fact that Enel is not in the current storyline, he will also not be featured in this list, even though he is a very powerful character. Now, although I do believe Luffy is one of the strongest One Piece characters, I do not believe he should be placed any higher than 10 on this list. My main reasoning for this is because a lot of other characters on this list are just much stronger than Luffy in quite a few different ways. Maybe they aren't stronger in every aspect, but in the majority they definitely are. And a lot of you will probably disagree with this when you see who some of these characters are, because, spoiler alert, some of the characters on this list Luffy has battled in the past and defeated them. But just because Luffy won those fights does not mean he is the stronger character by any means. In fact, many of those fights were decided purely on the help of others or just Luffy's overwhelming willpower in general. And although both of those things do factor into making someone stronger, sometimes you're going to need to battle without them. The other reason I cannot place Luffy any higher is because of one unfortunate issue. That being the fact he is the main character of the series, and because of that he gets special treatment, or as many call it, plot armor. Now, in many situations, plot armor is a blessing, and automatically will make these characters stronger in one aspect or another. But to me, it is almost cheating. We know for a fact that when Luffy goes up against the newest enemy, that he is almost guaranteed to defeat them somehow. Of course, this isn't always the case, but it is about 90% of the time, which is just unfair to me. The best example in my eyes is Luffy's fight against Doflamingo. There is no way Luffy could have won that fight if the plot didn't depend on it. And in addition to that, by the end of the story, Luffy is going to end up being the strongest character or one of the top 5, no matter how you look at it. But Luffy is still far from that point and has quite a long way to go. So because Luffy is undoubtedly one of the strongest characters in One Piece right now, in pretty much all of the aspects we were looking at, he takes the 10th place on this list. But because he is not as strong as some of the others on this list, and he's not as strong as some of the opponents he managed to defeat in the past, sheerly because of plot armor, I cannot place him any higher than number 10. Number 9, Kuzan. Just like Luffy, the first thing we're going to be going over is his physical abilities. Considering that Kuzan was formerly an admiral of the Marines, he has immense physical strength. For instance, he was easily able to battle against Diamond Jozu and even Whitebeard himself while being seemingly equal in power to them. He was also able to take a hockey-imbued kick from Marco the Phoenix and come out seemingly uninjured. Also, during his battle with Jozu, he took on a hockey-imbued strike from Jozu while he was covered in diamonds, and Kuzan came out of it with only a small scratch on his lip, showing that even some of his powerful attacks barely affect his defensive capabilities. He can also jump a very great distance in only a matter of seconds, very similar to the technique Soru, which his speed could either be Soru or just his natural speed in general. We can also assume his endurance and stamina is unmatched, because he was able to battle Sakazuki alone for 10 whole days on an island before finally being defeated. Kuzan also has very good hearing, as he was able to hear something in the water before the war at Marineford began. Also, as a testament to his strength, Jaguar D. Saul, who was capable of lifting warships himself, has said that Kuzan's strength was abnormal even before he became an admiral. So we can safely assume that there's even more we have yet to see about this man's strength. In regards to his intelligence, Kuzan is a very complex and hard-to-read character. He acted very lazy and aloof while he was an admiral, so it often appears as though he isn't very intelligent. But considering he was a Marine admiral, I think it's safe to assume he is much smarter than he looks, especially considering how he easily shed his lazy attitude once the Marineford War began. So although not much is known about how smart he actually is, I think it's safe to say we shouldn't underestimate his intelligence. But I also don't think he's a genius either. Next, let's discuss his ability to use Haki. Unfortunately, we haven't seen Kuzan use Haki very much at all. However, we do know that he possesses it, because it has been stated that all Marines with the rank of Vice Admiral or higher have the ability to use Haki. And when Kuzan was a member of the Marines, he was an Admiral, so we can safely assume his ability to use Haki is definitely way above average. So far, we have only seen one instance of Kuzan using Haki, which was Armament Hockey, and he used it along with Kizaru and Sakazuki to create a shield that stopped Whitebeard from destroying the execution platform. Now, with the 2-year time skip, it is also safe to assume that his Haki has gotten stronger as well. Now, moving on to his Devil Fruit, which is the Hiya Hiya no Mi, otherwise known as the Chili Chili Fruit. This Devil Fruit is a Logia type and allows Kuzan to turn both himself and the area surrounding him into ice. It should also be noted that this fruit is superior to the Yuki Yuki no Mi, making it automatically a bit higher on the list, even though Monet is dead, so she isn't eligible for this list anyways. It should also be noted that this fruit was able to go up against the Magu Magu no Mi for 10 whole days, and that fruit has been said to be this fruit's natural weakness. So the very fact that this fruit was able to go up against the fruit it is weak against for 10 whole days and actually put up a decent fight is a huge accomplishment by itself. But in addition to that, this fruit was also powerful enough to turn half of an island into a frozen wasteland over the course of that 10-day battle. And the fact that this fruit can also change the environment on prolonged use is also a big accomplishment in terms of how powerful this fruit can really be. This fruit's main use is for combat purposes, but it can also be used for other things. This fruit allows the user to freeze anyone or anything that comes into contact with them, whether or not Kuzan makes contact with the object in question or the object makes contact with him. If a person were to be frozen and any area that is frozen is not treated properly and immediately, that person will become frostbitten, which leads to permanent tissue damage. Additionally, if anyone he freezes completely is not thawed almost immediately, they will die. However, that person will also remain alive while frozen inside the ice for a short period of time. And if the ice is broken with the person still inside, they will also shatter, killing them. This devil fruit also makes Kuzan himself very resistant to the cold, meaning he can easily survive in harsh frozen environments without freezing to death. Also, unlike most other Logia, this fruit's element is solid, meaning that although Kuzan can turn into his element to bypass attacks, he will still be physically hit. Although any ice that is broken from the hit will just reform right away, meaning that parts of his body were not in danger of being broken along with it. Kuzan has also created a number of different techniques that he can use, such as Ice Age, where he places his hands on large bodies of water such as the ocean and can freeze the whole area in an instant, along with everything else the water touches. This ice can stretch for miles and will not thaw for a whole week. And Ice Age can be very useful for creating a platform to walk on, or say freezing an enemy ship in place so it cannot escape at sea. The Ice Time Capsule, where Kuzan creates a wave of ice that travels along the ground, and anything it touches will completely freeze. The Ice Ball, where Kuzan freezes a victim in a gigantic ice sphere from a distance. And the Ice Blocked Pheasant Beak, which is where Kuzan releases a gigantic wave of ice in the shape of a pheasant all at once. It should also be noted that Kuzan can create weapons such as a spear out of his ice, and throw this spear at enemies from afar as a method of having a long-ranged attack, because many of his techniques involve directly touching his enemies, meaning that most attacks need to be performed in close proximity. Also, this fruit is one of the few that can counteract its weakness to falling in water, because Kuzan can simply freeze the water around him and then walk on the surface to escape the sea. And that about does it for his devil fruit, so lastly, let's look at his connections. Although Kuzan is no longer a Marine, I think it's very safe to say that he still managed to remain friends with many of his allies who are still Marines, such as Smoker and Sengoku. It has also been said that while he was in the Marines, he was very popular with Marines of all ranks, which leads me to believe that even though he is not still a member of the Marines, he still has his connections from within, to a certain extent of course. Unfortunately for him though, when he resigned from the Marines, he also cut all ties with the world government, so a lot of his useful connections are no longer available. And although we currently don't know much about the situation, it seems as though Kuzan has allied himself with the underworld brokers in some way. And it was also confirmed by the Gorosei that Kuzan has also allied himself with the Blackbeard Pirates. And although we don't know what their working relationship is, having any alliance with a Yonko is a connection to be feared by many. So right away, compared to all the information we have about Luffy, it feels as if Kuzan falls a bit short, which I can definitely see. But there are a couple reasons why I think Kuzan is stronger than Luffy. The first being that Kuzan's fruit is superior to Luffy's. You see, although rubber itself can't exactly freeze, when rubber gets exposed to very cold temperatures it becomes hard and brittle, making it very hard to stretch. On top of that, when Luffy first fought Kuzan, he was almost immediately defeated. And at Marineford, although they didn't encounter each other for very long, it was very easy for Kuzan to take advantage of him once again. 2 years later, Luffy is obviously much stronger, but I'm also guessing Kuzan is as well. So although I feel like Luffy would put up a decent fight against him, I feel like the power of ice would end up doing nothing but slowing Luffy down until he is ultimately defeated. In addition, if Kuzan was able to battle against the Magu Magu no Mi, which his fruit is weak against for 10 10 whole days. What do you think he could do against a fruit he has the advantage against? Well, I'll tell ya, defeat it. Although, in comparison to Luffy, Kuzan has his advantages and, of course, his disadvantages. Even though Kuzan puts on a very lazy demeanor, I still believe he is decently intelligent, whereas Luffy is not very intelligent. So I think in a battle of brains, Kuzan would be able to take the cake. Physically, I feel like the two are about even or pretty close too, but Kuzan likely has the upper edge when it comes to raw physical power. In terms of hockey, Luffy has the edge, but only because we truly don't know what Kuzan can really do. I imagine he would need to be very proficient with it to achieve the role of Admiral in the first place, but even so, Luffy has shown a great deal of mastery when it comes to hockey, and since Kuzan likely doesn't have Conqueror's hockey, Luffy has him beat. And in terms of connections, Luffy definitely has the upper hand, but Kuzan also has allies in places Luffy does not, which also gives him some leverage. Not only is he somewhat allied with Marines from his time serving with them, but he also has some sort of relationship with some of Luffy's enemies, the Underworld and the Yonko Blackbeard. So although Luffy has many allies and some very important ones, Kuzan has allies that Luffy likely never will. So compared to Luffy, I think the two are about even in most aspects. Something Luffy is lacking, Kuzan reigns superior, and something Kuzan is lacking, Luffy reigns superior. But even with all that give and take, it ends up coming down to which one would have the advantage in a fight. And because Kuzan has the superior Devil Fruit, I think he would end up being stronger than Luffy. Now, compared to other people who will appear on this list, Kuzan would still put up a good fight with each of them. But I believe that all of the other characters on this list would be able to defeat Kuzan in one way or another. Some of these characters have defeated him or went up against him in the past, while others on the list are simply just speculation. I feel it is also important to note that after Kuzan's fight with Sakazuki, he has a lot of scars and possible tissue damage. He also ended up losing his left leg in their battle, and now uses a leg made out of ice as a prosthetic. So I also feel that his missing limb could cause Kuzan a lot of problems during the battle. Whether his ice leg is broken during the battle and he doesn't have enough time to form a new one, or it simply doesn't work as well as an actual leg, I feel it does hurt his combat potential. So overall, Kuzan is definitely one of the strongest characters in One Piece, but there are still quite a few characters that I feel are stronger than him, and characters who have superiority to his abilities. So because of that, Kuzan will remain at number 9. Number 8. Don Quixote Doflamingo. Much like Luffy, we've got a lot of information to cover with Doflamingo, so go grab some more snacks. But like the rest, we'll begin with his physical abilities. So I honestly don't even know what to start with regarding his physical abilities, because Doflamingo has massive strength, insanely fast reflexes, incredible speed, great defensive abilities, and endurance. And that's not even everything. So let us begin with his physical strength, which to say the least is monstrous. For a few different examples, Doflamingo was never even injured until the Dressrosa arc. And with that, you need to keep in mind he also participated in the Marineford War, where so many big names were injured in one way or another. Yet Doflamingo made it out without even a scratch. It has also been said by Trafalgar Law that if Doflamingo were to resign from the Shichibukai, the Marines would send their most powerful members, which are the Admirals, to take him down because Doflamingo is so powerful that anyone else wouldn't even be able to put up a decent fight against him. Doflamingo himself also has a very monstrous build, being 10 feet tall. And with that build and the strength he possesses, he is easily able to carry around a human being without ever getting tired. His arms are obviously very strong, but his real strength lies in his legs, because his fighting style specializes in immensely powerful kicks, being able to easily destroy large rocks, metal, and even entire buildings with a single kick. Doflamingo's leg strength is also so immense that he was able to create a 360-degree shockwave with one swing of his leg that was powerful enough to cut through all 3 of the Dressrosa Palace towers. So when it comes to raw physical strength, Doflamingo is vastly superior to the majority of characters in One Piece. When it comes down to speed, Doflamingo is tremendously fast. Some of this, of course, comes from his Devil Fruit ability being able to pull himself in directions if need be, but by himself he is also fast enough to easily dodge most attacks that come his way. And if he is unable to dodge it in time, he is still fast enough to block the incoming attack with ease, making both his speed and reflexes very hard to counter. He was also able to easily dodge Oars Jr.'s attacks and jump over him, along with escape Crocodile's sandstorm without taking any damage. So although he is by no means the fastest character, he is fast enough to give most powerful characters a run for their life. And last but not least, Doflamingo's defensive abilities and endurance are on a whole nother level. Even at the very young age of 8 years old, Doflamingo was able to withstand numerous sessions of torture from mobs of people without cracking under pressure, but instead swearing his revenge against them. So now, over 30 years later, his pain tolerance is almost non-existent, because it seems as if there are very few ways to actually hurt him. For instance, in the beginning of the Dressrosa arc, when Baby 5 hit him with an explosive round to the face, and it didn't damage him or phase him in the slightest, and he just continued with what he was doing as though nothing happened, meaning his body must be so strong to the point where it takes a lot of power just to make him feel something. Another good example of his defensive capabilities was his ability to easily block Sanji's Diablo Jambi kick and a barrage of Sanji's other kicks afterwards without taking any damage, which in comparison, Sanji's kicks are easily able to destroy a pacifista's body effortlessly. So the fact that Doflamingo could block those attacks so easily while taking no damage and not even using his haki is very, very impressive. He was also able to take a direct hit from Law's Gamma Knife, which must have been painful even for him, and then he was able to still continue on as if his organs didn't just get badly injured. He was also able to take a barrage of Luffy's attacks without taking too much damage, and even being able to still get back up and fight stronger than ever after getting pummeled time and time again by Luffy's Gear 4th attacks, until the point where Doflamingo was finally defeated. And you still need to keep in mind that he did all of this while his organs were badly damaged. So during that situation, imagine what Doflamingo could withstand if his insides were unharmed. Moving on to his intelligence, Doflamingo may not be what we would consider a downright genius, but he is definitely very intelligent and a mastermind whenever it comes to his schemes. A few good examples of what I mean would be the way he attempted to separate Law and Luffy when they entered Dressrosa by offering the Mera Mera no Mi as a prize, because he knew that Luffy would never let anyone else have his brother's devil fruit. And sure enough, Doflamingo was correct, which shows that he has great insight. And his plan ended up working heavily in his favor just like he thought it would, even if it would backfire later on. Another good example would be how Doflamingo used his connection with the world government and the celestial dragons to make his enemies think he had left the Shichibukai, which would in turn trap them. Which, like I've said earlier, the connections that these characters have are very important in deciding how strong you actually are, because with friends in high places like this, you can accomplish some pretty devastating things. So the fact that Doflamingo actually uses these connections in his strategy shows how intelligent he really is. And my last example would be how Doflamingo found a way to reclaim Dressrosa by offering the people their lives along with prize money for taking down the ones who overthrew him in the first place, which moved most people back to his side of the playing field, for a little while at least. This example here truly shows that even if Doflamingo is seemingly backed into a corner, or his plans are crumbling beneath him, he can still quickly think of a way to turn the tables back in his favor, and then swiftly execute his new counterattack, showing that there is more than meets the eye with this heavenly demon. Next up is his ability to use haki, and something I forgot to mention earlier when we were talking about his strength and defensive capabilities was that the majority of what we discussed was without his use of haki. So before I even begin to talk about his haki, can you imagine how much more powerful he is when he applies haki to his attacks and uses it for defense? Jesus fucking Christ, he really is a monster. Anyway, Doflamingo is able to use both Armament Hockey and Conqueror's Hockey, which, since we talked about what these are earlier, I'm just going to assume you guys remember what they do for the rest of the video. But the sheer fact that Doflamingo can use Conqueror's Hockey is already an accomplishment by itself, because there are currently only 6 characters who have access to it. Additionally, unlike the other characters, his Conqueror's Hockey was first awakened when he was only 10 years old. Unfortunately, we don't get to see Doflamingo use this hockey.
Baki lumien. Baki ya.
The G5 soldiers during his fight with Smoker. And we also get to see its effect when his hockey clashes with Luffy. But even if we don't get to see it too much, the fact that he still has it is enough to give him an edge on this list. However, when it comes to his armament hockey, it's not as good as it could be. But don't get me wrong, it is still way above average. The reason I say it's not as good as it could be is because although he has no problem blocking powerful powerful attacks like Luffy's Jet Gatling without taking any damage, and using his Haki to soften the blow from Luffy's Gear 4th techniques, but the problem is his Haki is not powerful enough to defend from sharp objects or blades, because we can visibly see that his hand is cut when he grabs Law's sword. So defensively, on top of his monstrous endurance, his Haki is pretty darn good, but not the best. And offensively, it basically just makes all of his attacks a bit more powerful, but that's what Armament Hockey does for pretty much everyone else too. But since Doflamingo already has immense strength, his attacks can only get so much stronger with his use of Haki. So offensively, I would say his Haki is better than his use of it defensively because it seems to benefit him a bit more. Also, one thing I wanted to add was that Doflamingo can imbue the strings from his Devil Fruit with Haki as well, meaning that his already overpowered strings can now injure Logia users. And when Doflamingo used this against Smoker, who is a Logia user, he was severely injured because of it. So even if his Haki doesn't necessarily make his Devil Fruit ability much stronger, it does make it useful against other Devil Fruit users, specifically the Logia, giving him a better edge in a fight. Now, since we just brought it up, let's move on to his Devil Fruit, which is the Ito Ito no Mi, or the String Fruit. And what this fruit does is it allows the user to create and manipulate strings. These strings are very thin, razor sharp, and virtually indestructible, and can be attached to pretty much anything, from people, objects, and even non-solid objects like clouds. These strings can be generated from seemingly any part of the user's own body, including their organs, and are mostly seen protruding from the user's palms and fingertips. These strings can be used a ton of different ways as well, such as swiping his hands to release piano wire-looking strings that can slice through pretty much anything from people, buildings, weapons, and more, creating bundled-up strings that can be constructed into rope, bullets, and even an identical clone of himself. He can also control people like a puppet by attaching his strings to their spine, and in addition to that, he can control multiple people at the same time. And he can even fly or transport himself through the air by attaching his strings to nearby clouds. So the possibilities for this one are seemingly endless. Also, like we stated earlier, Doflamingo can also use these strings to stitch up his internal organs when they are badly injured. Like I mentioned before, these strings are also so durable to the point where they are virtually indestructible, because so far there are very few ways to damage them whatsoever. These strings are also so thin when they are not compressed, to the point where if you weren't aware he had this ability, you probably wouldn't even see the attack coming. Additionally, one small downfall is that these strings can seemingly cut through anything, but they are unable to cut through Sea Prism Stone. And these strings can also be blocked or deflected with Armament Hockey. So if you were to say cover a sword in Hockey, these strings would not be able to cut through it. But now that we know what this Devil Fruit can do, let's look at some of his signature techniques. Parasite, which is basically where he controls one or more people like a puppet. Goshikito, which is where Doflamingo swipes his hand to send string from each finger flying at his opponent or other object. And these strings can cut through almost anything like we recently stated. Overheat, which is a bunch of string condensed into a giant whip used to basically whip his enemies. Also in the anime, it should be noted that this whip appears to look as if it is emitting heat, but this is anime only, and as far as we know, this whip does not actually generate heat. Side note, this whip can also travel many kilometers, so good luck running away from it. Termite, which are bullet strings that he fires from his fingers. Black Knight, which is Doflamingo's almost identical clone of himself made entirely out of strings. It should also be noted that Doflamingo is in control of this clone, and the clone itself is pretty damn strong considering it's just moving strings. This clone is strong enough to slap away a jet pistol from Luffy, and since it does not feel pain, it is very beneficial to use in a fight. It should also be noted that unlike Doflamingo's normal strings, these Black Knight clones can be damaged, such as when Kiros cut off a clone's head. Although this could just be the strings separating rather than breaking, so that is up for debate. Athlete, which is where Doflamingo attaches string to his foot and then sends a powerful kick to his opponent. This attack was also powerful enough to injure Luffy even when he was defending with Armament Hockey. And finally, the Torikago, better known as the Birdcage. This is considered Doflamingo's ultimate technique. To perform this technique, Doflamingo shoots an enormous amount of string into the air that forms what appears to be a giant birdcage around Doflamingo's location that covers a very great distance. The string pillars then trap anyone on the inside of the cage because there is no way to escape without defeating Doflamingo himself. And the reason for that is because these pillars will cut almost anything they come in contact with. Doflamingo can also choose to bring the cage boundaries closer to him, forcing people on the inside to inevitably come closer and closer to his location. and he can also control the speed in which the cage moves at will. Although the wires cannot be stopped without defeating Doflamingo, the cage can be slowed down with enough physical forces pushing it back. And like we stated earlier, most of these techniques can also be applied with Hockey to make them both stronger and able to hit Logia Devil Fruit users who were previously intangible, making this Devil Fruit something to really fear. But it doesn't even stop there. Doflamingo has found a way to awaken his Devil Fruit, which is something we have not seen very much of yet in the series. And as of making this video, he is currently the only confirmed Paramecia Devil Fruit user to awaken his fruit. This awakening allows him to transform his surroundings into string, so the ground, nearby buildings, and other objects can become Doflamingo strings at will, making this fruit seem like a whole nother beast entirely. With these new strings, Doflamingo has also created a whole new plethora of techniques, which we will go over now. Break White, which is where Doflamingo creates two gigantic pillars or sheets of string that wrap around his opponent and crush them. Off-White, which is where Doflamingo creates two masses of string as a shield or defensive measure that can also push away his opponent. Flap Thread, which is where Doflamingo uses tons of strings from the surrounding environment to form this string into a bunch of points, which all fly at his opponent in the form of wings, and are said to feel like 1,000 arrows piercing all at once. And God Thread, which is where Doflamingo forms the string into 16 thick strings that he sends at his opponent all at once. Although this attack was deflected by Luffy's King Kong gun, it still managed to pierce through Luffy's arm slightly before being overpowered. However, this was done with the help of Doflamingo imbuing Hockey into the God Thread as well. So it is possible for him to add Hockey to his awakened abilities, making them even stronger if you can believe that. But that pretty much covers his Devil Fruit abilities, so lastly, let's talk about his notable connections and allies. The very first set of allies we should discuss is his own crew or family, the Don Quijote Pirates. These allies are by far the most important to Doflamingo, and he shows undying love and respect to each member in his upper ranks, and will continue to show respect unless one of them were to betray him. Each member of his family are very powerful in their own way, and many of them have a Devil Fruit, meaning that he also has a small army of different Devil Fruit abilities at his disposal. With this crew, he is also able to take over the entire kingdom of Dressrosa and rule it accordingly. Although each member of this elite family are notable in their own way, let's talk about the very important ones. The most important are definitely his 4 elite officers, Virgo, Treble, Pika, and Diamante. Each one of them are responsible not only for Doflamingo's well-being, especially when he was young, but they are also each insanely powerful. Not by any means on Doflamingo's own level of strength, but they are strong enough to go toe-to-toe with a member of the Supernovas like Zoro. Virgo was probably the most important member of the 4 regarding what he was tasked with doing, which was infiltrating the Marines from the inside as an undercover agent. And Doflamingo has also said Virgo is his most convenient and trustworthy Marine officer, meaning that Doflamingo likely has other undercover agents hiding within the Marines. But now that Virgo is dead and we have no proof of others on the inside, this is no longer valid. Another important member of his crew would of course be Sugar, specifically for the use of her Devil Fruit ability, which allowed Doflamingo to have an even tighter grasp on Dressrosa, and what happens to his people if they disobey. Doflamingo also had the undying loyalty of Bellamy and the Bellamy Pirates, and though they have defected since, it opens up the discussion as to whether or not Doflamingo has other pirate crews who are allied to him, which I would say he definitely does. So even though we don't know any of them offhand, Doflamingo definitely has other crews working under him that could help him whenever he is in need. Although his defeat definitely took a hit on this next connection, Doflamingo also has connections to the underworld, and he himself was one of the most influential underworld brokers. Because of this, we can only imagine that Doflamingo has a lot of very dangerous connections that we aren't even aware of. And considering that Doflamingo was an owner of a slave trading house, and he sold Caesar Clown's artificial devil fruits through the underworld as well as along with other items, we can only assume that for his services, other members of the underworld would be willing to help him out if he were in need. Which, because of the underworld, it leads me to his next connection, which is his connection to the Yonko, Kaido. Doflamingo, along with Caesar Clown, supplied Kaido with the smiles he uses for his crew of beasts. Kaido purchases these through Doflamingo via the underworld, and although Doflamingo fears Kaido and was afraid Kaido would kill him if he could not produce the smiles, Kaido still sent one of his strongest men, a member of the 3 disasters, Jack the Drought, to try and rescue Doflamingo from the Marines. This right here proves that Doflamingo's connection to Kaido is a very important one, to the point where Kaido would send one of his strongest men to try and set him free. So Doflamingo having a Yonko as his ally is definitely a very important connection to have. And finally, Doflamingo also has a weird connection with the world government, to say the least. Doflamingo himself has descended from one of the 20 kings who founded the world government 800 years ago. So Doflamingo himself was a world noble back in the day before his father forfeited their rights as nobles to live among the people. Since then, Doflamingo has found a way to blackmail the world government, or more specifically the Celestial Dragons, with his knowledge of the national treasure in Marie Joyce. From this, Doflamingo blackmailed the world government into making him a Shichibukai and the Celestial Dragons to get somewhat equal rights to them. So because of that, Doflamingo is able to accomplish things that many people never could, such as when he got a false story printed in the newspaper about himself leaving the Shichibukai to fool Luffy and Law. There is literally no one else besides the world government and the Celestial Dragons who could pull something like this off. So although he's not exactly on good terms with the world government or the Celestial Dragons for that matter, he still has the ability to use their power for his own benefit, which is something pretty much every other character on this list will never be able to do. Also, as a side note, it was revealed that the person who commanded Doflamingo to kill Gecko Moria was somebody above even Sengoku at the time.
Oh,
So
Wally.
Doflamingo has connections in
Wally.
some high places, and that pretty much does it for all his notable allies. So in conclusion, let's talk about why I believe he is one of the strongest, if it's not obvious already, and why I placed him where I did on this list. To me, Doflamingo is one of the physically strongest characters revealed in the series so far, in terms of both his offense and defensive abilities. Do I think Doflamingo is the strongest out of everyone else physically? Not a chance. But compared to some of the other characters on this list, I still think his physical capabilities remain supreme. And his pain tolerance is also on a whole new level. Now, personally, I believe some of that has to do with his willpower, which in turn goes hand in hand with his ability to use Conqueror's Hockey. And speaking of his hockey, I think Doflamingo is a weird case, because I feel like his Armament Hockey is of course way above average, but compared to some of the other characters, it seems as if it's a bit lacking, because Doflamingo is already physically a monster. So because of that, I feel most of his attacks wouldn't see a big increase in power when he uses it versus other characters like Luffy, whose hockey greatly increases his attack power. But because Doflamingo has access to Conqueror's Hockey, he still gets a big thumbs up when it comes to his hockey abilities. Regarding his Devil Fruit, I think Doflamingo has one of the most powerful, useful, and versatile Devil Fruits in the One Piece world, and he has definitely shown us what it is capable of. I won't repeat everything because we went over a lot, but the main points I make is the amount of things this Devil Fruit is capable of doing is astronomical. The ability to apply hockey to his strings to hurt Logia users is only a big benefit, and the sheer fact that Doflamingo is able to take over an entire kingdom with his abilities is crazy. That just shows on a larger scale what he is capable of. On top of that, he is also one of the only characters who have been confirmed to have awakened his Devil Fruit, giving him an entirely new range of abilities and making it seem as if Doflamingo has a different Devil Fruit entirely. And the final thing I want to mention about his Devil Fruit is that compared to a fruit like Luffy, Doflamingo's Devil Fruit does not harm him physically with extended use or certain techniques, which automatically gives him the edge. Regarding his intelligence, I feel like Doflamingo is one of those characters people don't really think of as being overly intelligent, but to me, he is one of the smartest characters revealed so far. Now, I don't think he is at the level of a genius by any means, but he's pretty darn close. I've already went over a bunch of examples above, but basically he has a plan for seemingly every possible situation or outcome, and he knows how to easily manipulate anyone he comes in contact with. And finally, Doflamingo has a lot of good connections in some powerful places. He has a Yonko, powerful crew, people in the Marines most likely, and the power of the Celestial Dragons at his fingertips. So although he may not have as many allies as, say, Luffy, he does have some of the most powerful at his disposal, making him someone you don't want to make an enemy of. So in regards to why I think he is stronger than Kuzan, it brings me back to their encounter when Doflamingo was attacking Smoker. Kuzan came up and froze Doflamingo completely, and Doflamingo was able to easily break himself out of the ice, which is something we have not seen many characters able to do yet. For For instance, when Kuzan fought against Jozu, Jozu was completely frozen and was unable to break himself out, resulting in Jozu losing an arm, whereas Doflamingo was able to easily break out of the ice. Now, in terms of raw power, I feel like Doflamingo has the edge, but Kuzan would still be able to give him a pretty difficult time. I also think Doflamingo is more intelligent than Kuzan, giving him a better sense of strategy. So I feel like by himself, Kuzan would not be able to take Doflamingo down, but he would be able to give Doflamingo a solid run for his money. Another reason why I believe Kuzan
Hey, what's up, what's up? What's up, my friend? Alfazane, claro. Vou estar na Comic Con, eu mandei. Yeah, it is from Sword Art Online. So, buddy, get it here, Alfazane. Take a look. Here. And over there, you can, how can I say? You can,
and don't get me wrong, the fact that Luffy is strong enough to go up against Doflamingo and even defeat him is one hell of an accomplishment. Just because
you can.
someone else in a fight doesn't always mean they are the stronger individual. So what I'm looking at is, would Doflamingo be able to beat Luffy?
You can. Yeah, over there, you can participate. You can participate on my giveaway. Yes. Olha para aqui. You can participate on my. Sorry, I was zoom. Yeah. Thank you. Much appreciated, guys. Awesome. Glad you like. So far,
They all have a different set of powerful allies, and I feel as if all three of them were to have some sort of three-way war against each other's allies. Doflamingo would put up one hell of a fight, considering his connections with both Yonko and the world government. But would he win? It's up for debate. I feel like because of all of this, Doflamingo definitely deserves to be above both of those two on the list. And Doflamingo has without a doubt earned his spot as the 8th strongest character in One Piece. But if he's only number 8, who could possibly be stronger than him? Number 7, Charlotte Cracker. So let us begin with his physical abilities. And without even talking about specifics, Cracker is without a doubt very powerful. Cracker is powerful enough to be one of the 3 highest ranking members in the Yonko Big Mom's crew, which are dubbed the 3 Sweet Commanders. And to be considered strong enough to rank highly in a Yonko's crew is definitely something that cannot be achieved without some serious power. Additionally, Cracker currently also has the 3rd highest bounty revealed in the series so far, which is 860 million berries, meaning that the world government considers him a highly dangerous individual. Now, before we continue on, something else I wanted to bring up real quick would be the other 2 Sweet Commanders, who are Smoothie and Katakuri. As of right now, Katakuri hasn't even been revealed, so since we know nothing about them, they will not be on this list. And when it comes to Smoothie, she was only revealed a couple chapters ago, so we do know.
But of course, I will be on Comic Con. Hopefully, if it happens, because if stupid COVID. Man, if it doesn't happen, I'm gonna. Jesus. I can't believe. It wouldn't be true. Can't be true.
Highest bounty revealed in the series, which is 932 million berries. So she is without a doubt on the same level or higher than Cracker, just based on the bounty alone. So like I said before, since we don't know enough about her abilities, she will not be on this list. But I would like to give her an honorable mention regardless, and I would assume that she would be somewhere near Cracker on this list if I were to put her on. But anyways, now let's get back to Cracker. And something else I wanted to mention about him is how just the sound of his voice alone is enough for the nearby homies to cower in fear. Which implies that Cracker is so powerful that his comrades even fear what he could possibly do. When it comes to his physical strength, Cracker is easily able to carry around a sword that is much bigger than his actual body, and swing it at very great speed, showing us that the weight of that massive sword is almost nothing to him. He is also able to physically repel Luffy and his attacks without any problem whatsoever. In regards to his durability, Cracker is a bit lacking because of how he was knocked unconscious from Luffy's tank man technique. However, to be fair, he flew quite a long way, crashing into multiple things along the way as well, so it must have been a very powerful attack that did a lot of damage to him. but I feel like other characters on this list would still be able to get back up and fight after taking on that attack. So his durability could be a tad bit better, but it's still not too bad, because Cracker was easily able to withstand some of Luffy's other powerful attacks without even being injured. But what he lacks in durability, he makes up in stamina, as he was able to easily fight and chase after Luffy for 11 whole hours while constantly using his Devil Fruit ability, which does take a small toll on his stamina. So the fact that he was able to keep going after that is very impressive. Something else I want to add is that his physical attacks are also greatly increased with Armament Hockey, but we'll discuss that in a little bit here. In regards to his intelligence, I believe that Cracker is a lot smarter than most people think, especially when it comes to deception. Although we'll talk about his actual Devil Fruit ability in a little bit here, Cracker used his Devil Fruit's ability to hide in a Biscuit Soldier he created as a suit of armor. And because the Biscuit Soldier looks nothing like his actual appearance, the world government and the Marines don't know what Cracker's actual appearance is, or they think his Biscuit Soldier is Cracker's actual appearance. Because of that, his wanted poster even features this false appearance. So Cracker is so crafty that he successfully fooled the world government this whole entire time, leading to the ultimate deception. Another example was the way he tried to fool Luffy into thinking his Devil Fruit ability was the ability to multiply his limbs and weapons. And finally, on top of that, he also made his Biscuit armor cough up jam that looked like blood, to make it appear as if he was badly wounded when in reality he wasn't even injured, leading to a very tricky counterattack. So the fact that Cracker is smart enough to not only deceive the world government, but also deceive his opponent more than once in the middle of a battle is something that most characters wouldn't be able to do. So although he may not be a genius or close to one by any means, he is still a rather smart individual. Moving on to his hockey abilities, Cracker only has the ability to use Armament Hockey. However, his Armament Hockey is definitely the strongest we've seen on this list so far. Luffy, who I would say was our previous best Armament Hockey user on this list, has even said during battle that Cracker's hockey was extremely tough. So that right there is saying something in terms of its defensive capabilities. But when it comes to his offensive use of hockey, Cracker can not only apply this to his normal attacks, but he can also apply it to his gigantic sword. And when he does, his sword's cutting power along with his overall attack power is greatly increased, to the point where Cracker almost cut off Luffy's arm with his hockey-imbued sword, while Luffy was using Gear 4. In comparison, Doflamingo's awakened strings imbued with hockey were only able to slightly damage Luffy's Gear 4th arm. So the fact that Cracker would have been able to cut it off shows how powerful he and his hockey really is. Cracker can also apply his hockey to his Biscuit soldiers and armor to make them even more powerful as well. So when it comes to his ability to use Armament Hockey, he is definitely the best on the list so far. However, he does not possess Conqueror's Hockey or Observation Hockey, so his hockey is not quite as good in terms of variety. Next up, let's discuss his Devil Fruit, which is the Bisu Bisu no Mi. This Devil Fruit allows the user to generate and manipulate biscuits at will, making them a biscuit human. With this ability, the user can seemingly create an unlimited amount of these biscuits, and the biscuits themselves can be manipulated in a ton of different ways, and is really only limited to the user's imagination. Considering that Cracker himself is somewhat of a master craftsman, he is capable of manipulating these biscuits into large, moving, human-like figures that are very realistic. Cracker can also create weapons for these figures, and if he so chooses, extra limbs and weapons. Cracker can control their movements at will, and so far there does not seem to be a limit to the amount he can control at once. Additionally, he can also get inside a Biscuit Soldier and control them from the inside. These Biscuit Soldiers are extremely strong and durable, but they can still be broken with enough brute force. And water will soften the biscuits to the point where they can be eaten. So this Devil Fruit does have a slight disadvantage in rainy weather or wet areas. So far with this Devil Fruit, we've only seen Cracker use two different techniques, which are Biscuit Soldier, which is where Cracker creates and controls his soldiers made out of biscuits, and Hard Biscuit. This technique is used when Cracker himself is inside a Biscuit Soldier. He then multiplies his biscuit-shaped shield and covers it with Armament Hockey, and then slams it into his opponent, mainly to pin them to the ground, but it could also be used as a way to repel or stun his enemies. This Devil Fruit is definitely a very powerful and useful one. However, I think some of the others on this list are a bit better, mainly because this fruit does affect his stamina with prolonged use. and certain situations also render it a bit weaker, such as with rain. But I also believe that this fruit could be used in a lot of different ways other than just creating soldiers and weapons. Just think of all the potential things Cracker could create with all these biscuits. So because of all the extra possibilities, I'm still willing to say it's one of the better devil fruits for sure. And finally, let's look at his notable connections, or allies. His only big connection that we currently know about is the Yonko and his own mother, Big Mom, and her crew. Cracker himself is one of her 3 commanders, so because of that he has great authority within the crew itself, being able to single-handedly command large fleets into battle. But the main reason Big Mom is such an important ally to have is because Big Mom herself has over 80 children, Cracker himself being her 10th son. But what Big Mom strives to do is marry each of her children into a family that will somehow benefit or strengthen her crew. And with over 80 children who will eventually be married into powerful families, therefore creating powerful allies, because once these allies are married into her family, they are automatically considered part of her crew. The amount of allies that Big Mom possesses could be somewhat endless. 2 examples of these allies are the Germa 66, and although they are not allies by marriage quite yet, they are still currently on good terms. And another would be the Fishman Pirates, both of which are very powerful groups of individuals. Another thing that should be noted is Big Mom's crew and children themselves are each powerful in one way or another from what we've seen. So having this crew on Cracker's side proves to be a very beneficial and powerful ally to have. Additionally, when Cracker was defeated by Luffy, a whole entire army of Big Mom's crew were summoned to take Luffy down. So from that right there, you can see that this crew does not take things lightly. Big Mom also has a deep connection with the underworld similar to Doflamingo. What this connection consists of is currently unknown. However, the fact that she has ties to the underworld is enough to secure her, and in turn Cracker a higher role on the playing field. Other than this huge example, Cracker does not have any other known allies that we are aware of at least. But now that we've gone over everything, let's discuss why Cracker is one of the strongest, and why I placed him where I did on this list. Physically speaking, Cracker is a very weird case, because he is extremely powerful offensively. However, defensively, although he seems definitely way above average, I feel his defense is nowhere equal to his strength and offense. But with that being said, he can still take some of the most powerful attacks head-on with no issue. And like I said earlier, what he lacks in defense, he makes up in stamina. And because his Devil Fruit takes a toll on his stamina with prolonged use, it is very beneficial for his stamina to be extra high, which it definitely is. And regarding his lack of defense, I feel he also makes up for it with his army of Biscuit soldiers, who will continue to defend him whenever he chooses. So physically, I feel he is definitely one of the strongest, but once again, not close to the overall strongest. His intelligence is really something that surprised me, because he is very smart when it comes to the art of deception, which is something that isn't easy to do if you aren't very intelligent. And when it comes to deception, Cracker is some sort of genius, because he managed to fool the world government and the Marines with his false appearance for years. And with what we saw during his fight with Luffy, you can tell that he can easily think of ways to fool or throw off his opponent in a mere instant. So I would say that Cracker is definitely way above average when it comes to intelligence. His hockey is definitely top tier. And when it comes to Armament Hockey, I believe that Cracker is our strongest example of it so far, being able to easily overpower other proficient Armament Hockey users with no problem whatsoever. But since Cracker doesn't have access to the other 2 types of hockey, his full potential with hockey simply cannot be accessed. His Devil Fruit is a very interesting one to say the least, and Cracker has found ways to use it for his deception.
Alright, time to go to eat, guys. Alright. Hope you enjoyed the stream so far. Hope you had fun. All the best, take care. How do you find the video you listening to? Awesome, awesome. Yes, thanks, Alpha Zen. Cheers then. How do I find the video listening? On Twitch. On Twitch. How do I find the video listening to? Okay, send me a message on Instagram and I will send. Alright? All the best, guys. Take care.